Технические проблемы устранены, можно приступать. Сегодня хотел рассказать бы
Technical
вам
issues have
про
been resolved,
такую
so
штуке,
let's
которая
get
называется Cobalt
going.
Strike. Многие про
This
него
time I want
знают,
to talk
наверняка про
about
него
Cobalt
слышали,
Strike.
но
Most of
зачем
you
нам на
know
него
about it,
смотреть как
most of you heard about it,
защитникам и что мы из этого
but
можем
why we,
интересного
as blue
почерпнуть.
teamers, may be
Начну с такой
interested in
вводной,
Cobalt
как
Strike.
detection
Let me
philosophy.
start
Не
with
так
this
давно
sort of introduction
появилась
about
detection
detection
philosophy от
philosophy.
Elasticsearch. Они стали активно
Detection
делиться
philosophy
своим
from
контентом, который они
Elasticsearch
наработали
is a,
в
a
рамках
relatively
своего Elastic
new
Security. Я
phenomenon. They've
небольшой
started
фанат
sharing
чем-то
their
делиться,
content.
небольшой фанат левых идей, но
I'm
вот
not a big
делиться
fan of
идеями точно
sharing
надо. И вот один из ключевых
generally,
моментов
but
этой
sharing
detection философии
ideas is
говорит нам о
certainly a
том,
great
что
idea.
писать
So one of
детекты
the
нужно в
key
первую очередь на
tenets
технике и
is
тактике,
that
а не на тулзы. Потому что понятно,
detection
проще
must
написать,
be driven by
кто там у
tactics
нас
and
обращается к
techniques
лсасу,
as opposed to
нежели искать
tools.
там где-то этот вот наш мимикацию secure лоса. С другой
Well,
стороны,
because
это
it's
не
better
точно.
to really
Потому что
look
если
for
у нас с
calls
вами есть
for
настолько
LSAS as
часто и
opposed
широко
to Mimikatz, for
используемые
example.
вещи, как тот же
On
самый
the other
мимикац,
hand,
то
if
гораздо
we
проще
have things
написать
like
вот именно тот
Mimikatz,
самый
which are
паттерн.
used pretty much every
Во-первых,
day,
потому что
isn't
все-таки
it
люди, которые пишут это
easier to
люди, ну,
actually,
которые работают
write a
на нашей с
solution
вами
that will
доброй
track for
стороне,
Mimikatz?
red-тимеры. Поэтому они вот эти вот самые хлебные крошки по факту зашивают в свои продукты. И
Well,
гораздо
because,
проще
rat
один раз
teamers, they
написать
will
secure
build
лоса и
breadcrumbs like
мониторить такого
this
рода
into their
паттерны,
products.
вне
Wouldn't it be
зависимости от того, какие
easier to,
техники вы будете
monitor for
эксплуатировать.
such patterns
И вот
regardless of the
столь же
tactics
сильно, столь же
and
широко,
techniques
столь
they
же
will deploy?
часто эксплуатируемая вещь, как мимикац, это на
So,
текущий
a
момент
thing that is
времени и за последние
comparable
уже
to
несколько лет
Mimikatz in its
стал Cobalt
popularity
Strike.
is Cobalt Strike.
Мы это видим из отчетов всех аналитиков, мы это видим из
We are
моего
seeing
любимого
it
сайта
numerous
Peer Report,
reports.
где каждый
We are
первый
also
отчет
seeing
говорит
it
нам о том,
in
что либо на полном жизненном цикле инцидента, либо уже в
Offer
процессе его
reports and elsewhere.
постэксплуатации
And
у нас с
all of
вами
them are
использовался
saying
Cobalt
that,
Strike. Мы
at
видим
the
там
early stage or
неизменный
in
рост
post-exploitation, Cobalt
детектирования
Strike gets
этой
used.
истории, мы видим его
So
повсеместно, как
detection
от
of Cobalt Strike keeps growing. We keep
script-kiddies,
seeing
так и
it
до
everywhere, from
брокеров
script
initial
kiddies
access, как от
to initial
шифровальщиков, так и
access
до
brokers,
людей,
from
которые
encryptors
причисляются к правительственным кибергруппировкам. Мы видим
to
его
APTs.
повсеместно. И это
We
странная
do
история,
see it
потому что,
everywhere,
для
all
меня
over the
лично
board.
Cobalt это что-то
Which
вот,
is sort of weird,
из
because I
2017
personally
года.
think
Это
that
там
Cobalt is
Ждун,
something back from
Дмитрий
2017.
Анатольевич, все дела. И Cobalt, и группа IB, которая пишет про Cobalt,
And Group
и всем
ID back
ржем, ничем,
then,
что ну вот ничего
published their
себе
report
атрибуция,
on
обозвали
Cobalt, and we
группировку
were
по
thinking,
имени Тулзы. Но тем не менее, мы
back
видим
then, we kept saying
неизменный
that it's a
рост
weird
популярности
case of
этого
actually a
фреймворка.
group
Мы
being
видим,
called
что
after their tool. At
постоянно
the
он
same time,
где-то
this
используется,
framework
он
keeps
постоянно
gaining
растет и
popularity. It keeps being
используется
used.
практически
It is
повсеместно.
still on the
Немножко
rise, and
истории
it
всей
is
этой
actually
штуковины.
being
Все мы
used
знаем
a
такую штуку,
lot.
как Metasploit, и вот в 2010 году
Metasploit is
еще
also a household
Old Faggy
name.
вспомнит
And
эту
back
чудесную
in
синеволосую девочку,
2010,
появилась
old
GUI
phages
интерфейс
will
для
remember this
Metasploit,
girl. So
который
there was a
назывался
GUI
Hermitage. И этот самый
interface for
Hermitage
a Metasploit called
разработал автор
Hermitage.
Cobalt Strike по
It was
фамилии
developed
Matt.
by Raphael Mudge,
Правильно.
Mudge, I'm
Собственно,
not
уже
sure, the
тогда, в
author of Cobalt
2010 году,
Strike.
появилась
Back
возможность
then,
по
in
факту впервые
2010, there
работать
was a
с
first ever
множеством различных
opportunity
целей через один
to
единый
work with
тим-сервер,
numerous targets
по факту
through the
используя
same team
командную
server,
работу для нескольких red-тимеров или для нескольких
thereby, well, in
одновременно.
fact,
В
managing
результате у нас с
teamwork
вами
of several red
появился
teamers or
по факту
hackers.
основной инструмент для постэксплуатации, созданный в 2012
This
году
gave us,
тем же
the main
самым
tool for
Рафаэлем Мадом,
post-exploitation, launched
который
by
стал
same Raphael
де-факто
Mudge
стандартом для
in
всей
2012,
red-team
and it
эксплуатации.
did
Это стало
become the standard
уже полноценным
for red team
коммерческим решением
exploitation.
для
It
процессов
became a
информационной
proper
безопасности. Он стал
commercial tool
использоваться
for
везде в
cybersecurity
enterprise.
assessment.
И
It is being used a
что, с моей
lot
точки
now.
зрения,
It's
дало такой бурный
enterprise
рост,
level.
это то, что
And in my
изначально, вот тогда
opinion,
еще в
what
2012
helped
году
this
была заложена
colossal growth was
evasion
that back in
философия. То есть то,
2012,
что
it was built on
изменчивость
evasion
должна быть
philosophy.
зашита на каждом
It was
этапе,
built
на
on the
каждом
understanding
функционале,
that
который создан Cobalt
mutability
Strike. То
is
есть то,
something
что
that
ты
needs to
можешь
be
любой из элементов
omnipresent
настроить
in
под себя.
Cobalt
И
Strike,
ты можешь
so
таким
that
образом
you
настроить
should
все
be
эти элементы,
able
чтобы они
to
сами
customize
создавали
and
вот эту вот
fine-tune these
рандомизацию, сами
elements so that they
делали
actually
каждый
do
из компонентов
randomization
системы
on their
полиморфным.
own,
И
so that
главное,
every
что
component is polymorphic.
достаточно быстро этот фреймворк стал
What's also
набирать популярность не
important
только
is that this
среди
framework
профессиональных
started
хакеров,
gaining
и
popularity
на текущий
not just
момент мы
among red
с вами
teamers, but
видим
also
уже
among
на
hackers.
уровне там
So we
Европола
are
и
saying today
Интерполов
that
слова о том, что
even
давайте мы вообще
Interpol and
запретим Cobalt Strike,
Europol
потому
are
что,
saying, how
ну,
about we
слишком
prohibit Cobalt
много от
Strike
него
completely?
проблем, слишком много от
Because
него
it's giving us too
вредоносной
much
активности,
headache.
и она
It's
нивелирует ту
associated
пользу,
with too
которую
much
несет нам
malicious activity, and it
ротиринговый
does
аксесс.
seem to
Ну, что и, конечно,
overweigh
странно,
the
запретами
benefits that we can
весьма
get
сложно
for red
изменить,
teamers.
изменить
It's weird, I
наш
guess. I
уровень зрелости
mean,
информационной безопасности. Но сам факт таких
can you really
рассуждений говорит о
change
том,
the
что
level
это
of
уже серьезная сила.
cybersecurity maturity with
Что
prohibitions like this?
под
But it
собой
is quite
имеет
telling,
Cobalt Strike?
nonetheless.
Практически весь
What is
жизненный цикл
Cobalt Strike
инцидента
like,
можно
so to
развернуть
speak,
на нем.
internally?
То
The
есть,
whole incident
начиная от
life cycle can
разведки,
be supported with Cobalt
формирования
Strike.
подставных
You
фишинговых
know,
сайтов,
from
добавления
intelligence and
вредоносного
reconnaissance
пейлоуда в
to,
офисные документы,
weaponizing
создание
and
шаблонов
adding
фишинга,
dangerous payloads and
командная работа
creating spear
множества
phishing
ответственных
templates, supporting
сотрудников или
collaboration
участников команды.
of
И,
numerous,
конечно же,
shall I
после
say,
этого там
employees or
все от
teamers, and
закрепления до
post-exploitation as
повышения
well.
привилегий,
So, from persistence to privilege
lateral movement
escalation,
и вплоть до
lateral movement I
golden
love so
ticket, все
much,
это есть прямо вот из
all the way
коробки
to
и не
golden ticket.
вылизывается
All this is available
через
out
правую
of the
кнопку мыши.
box,
Все
easily
это
clickable with
должно
your,
быть снабжено
right
теми
mouse
самыми
click.
биконами, то есть инструментами
And all
взаимодействия
this,
техноподобных
has
системы, которые
beacons
скрыто
associated with it.
коммуницируют как между
And they
серверным
will be
управлением, так и между
communicating,
всеми теми узлами,
between
которые
the
синхронизированы у нас
CNC
в
and all the nodes
инфраструктуре,
we've
которая
been able
существует.
to
Если
compromise
взглянуть
in
на
the infrastructure we're
покрытие по MITRE
attacking.
атак, то можно точно сказать, что ну вот
Now, if we
такого
look at MITRE
серьезного покрытия с
coverage
точки
map,
зрения доступного функционала нет, наверное, ни у одного фреймворка.
no other framework will give you this kind of
User
coverage.
Guide. Это просто чудо какое-то. Если
User
никто не
Guide.
видел, советую
That's a
взглянуть
miracle.
на
If
User
you
Guide Cobalt
haven't
Strike.
checked out
Мало
Cobalt Strike
какие
User Guide,
инструменты
please do.
для защитника снабжены столь
Very few
любовно
tools for
написанной
defenders
документацией с
come
видео,
with this
с подробными референсами и со
carefully
всем чем
crafted
угодно. Поэтому
documentation,
пользоваться этим
videos, and
одно удовольствие.
references. It's a
То же
pleasure to
самое
use it.
относится и к командам. Не сложнее, чем,
Actually,
не знаю,
same is
писать
true for
скрипты
commands.
для
It's as simple as
для
writing
майнкрафтовского
scripts
сервера.
for
Просто
a
jump
Minecraft
to
server.
и полетел lateral
Jump
movement.
to,
Download,
and this is
upload,
all you need for lateral
get
movement.
system, вот
Download,
вам система, get
upload,
hash,
get
get
system,
password dump,
get
get
hash,
golden
get
ticket,
password
на,
dump,
держи.
get golden ticket.
Team
This is
сервер.
it.
Скажу об этом еще раз, потому что это крайне важная
This is
история с
something I
точки
want to
зрения
stress again
того,
because
что
it's
в
uber important.
вот эту вот офенсовскую историю она принесла индустриализацию. То есть вот как когда-то
It
Генри Форд
has
внедрил
made
конвейер, так
offensive
Cobalt Strike внедрил
industrially
конвейер
possible. Just
в
like Henry Ford created
заражение и
conveyor
в
in
дальнейшую
manufacturing,
эксплуатацию. Кто-то
Cobalt Strike
занимается
brought the
единичным аксессом,
conveyor
кто-то
belt
рассылает
to
фишинговые сообщения, кто-то
exploitation,
делает
reconnaissance, or what have you. So some people are doing initial access,
подставные
others are
сайты,
sending out
кто-то
phishing
занимается
messages,
прямо
yet others
сборкой,
are creating
настройкой
fake
кобальт-серверов,
websites,
делает там
while others will be
конфигурации,
setting up
кто-то в
Cobalt
дальнейшем
servers and doing
продает это на
configurations.
биржах conditional access,
And
либо
others,
занимается
will
непосредственно
be selling their
распространением внутри
services at
организации,
an
документацией,
initial
шифрованием,
access
выводом денег.
exchange, or
Все
maybe they
это
are doing
целая
lateral
индустрия.
access and
И эта индустрия
compromising
работает
and exfiltration
благодаря
of
Team
data and
серверу.
stealing of money. And this whole
Team сервер,
industry
понятно, очень
is
чувствительная история.
possible thanks to Team
Не
Server.
стоит делать так, чтобы он
Now,
был
Team
известен тем, кто
Server is
пытается от него защититься,
naturally
поэтому есть
special. I mean, you
целый
probably
механизм
don't want
рефлекторов, который
those who are
позволяет
trying to protect against it
абсолютно
to
без
know about it. That's why
какой-либо
there are so
там
many
информационной
redirectors.
нагрузки
And
делать прокси
redirectors, without
и
creating extra
форвардить это
information
на
loads,
уже
create
основной Team
proxies
сервер,
so
тем
that,
самым имея
you can
пул
forward
IP-адресов
this
и
traffic
доменов,
to the
который
main Team server while
даже если
also
часть из
having
них
the
будут
pool of IP
заблокированы, в
addresses and
итоге
domains.
не позволит нам
Even if
потерять
some of
связь
them
с
are blocked, you
биконом,
will
то есть
still
с
be
компрометированным
connected to the beacon.
хостом.
That is the
Из
compromised
того же
host.
самого TFIR-репорта цепочки компрометации из последних инцидентов.
From the
То есть
same fear
за
report,
час от
I'm showing this
первоначального
compromised
заражения
chains.
до домен админа
In an hour,
понятно,
like from zero
что
to domain admin.
получает пользователь, снабженный вредоносным пейлоудом, вордовский документ.
A
Он
user gets a Word
запускается
document with the malicious payload,
через сам,
gets
насколько я
executed,
помню, распространяется. Дальше обнаруживается
then it will be
сервер, на котором
propagated
можно
over
эксплуатировать
somebody, if I'm not
Zero Logon.
mistaken, then it finds a server where zero logon can be exploited, voila, we have the golden ticket. Same with injection in a different type of process.
Вот тут вот мы видим уже эксплуатацию encoding
So we can see here, for example, exploitation of PowerShell encoding,
через SMB-шный PowerShell.
where we can, propagate further through SMB PowerShell.
Коммуникации всех элементов инфраструктуры Cobalt Strike.
Beacons are extremely important for the Cobalt Strike infrastructure. Now, this is in fact the payload that will be fired up on victim hosts. They can be simple HTTP and HTTPS beacons for over the internet communication, but also SMB and LDAP beacons for internet communications. They're also hidden beacons, like I said, for the local network, that's LDAP. But there are also DNS and hybrid DNS HTTP for the internet. All these beacons are configured with the help of the so-called malleable profiles. This configuration enables us to maintain, these initial configurations and settings that will support further communications, and they contain the IP address, for example, that the beacon will be talking to. But it also contains numerous randomization tools that will help it stay hidden. This way, for example, you will be able to set up the frequency and also the jitter, so that we don't see this spikes in traffic every minute or so, but these spikes will be randomized. Same is true for user agents and name pipes. We can, in fact, use projects of GitHub that will help us automatically randomize it all. How do we hunt this infrastructure? How do we find online stuff that at least looks like Cobalt Strike? Many hackers are lazy and they will be using Cobalt Strike, which is pirated, because otherwise it's only commercially available. And this may actually help us identify their CNCs. By default, and default is the keyword here, port 50050 will be used. By default, Nano HTTPD will be used. By default, there is a serial number for the certificate, and we can look for all this. At the moment, both Shodan and SpyEye, ZeroEye,
product Cobalt Strike Beacon огромное количество публично доступных.
If we search there for a product Cobalt Strike Beacon, they will, already, give us sounds of them. They've already built into, their systems. Search by this, default configurations. This stuff is currently available out of the box. So if you go looking for a Cobalt Strike Beacon config, you will see the service that match the default settings, but also the configurations inside them. Now, J3 has been mentioned previously. This is actually a combination of cipher seeds of SSL and other parameters of SSL sessions, which can be used to create a fingerprint both for the client and the server, on the basis of which we can determine that a particular server is exactly what we are looking for. Because hackers are lazy, it is easier for them to clone virtual machines rather than, configure everything from scratch. So if these are default settings, if this infrastructure has already been involved in infection, we should be able to identify the server that the beacon was, corresponding with, and we can also identify the beacon. Then we should be able to find it on the traffic logs of our firewalls, and we can also find it actively by husking, so to speak, the servers, or we can find it passively using tools like Shodan. Same is true for JARM. JARM is actually using a slightly different way of combining client hello packets. And this gives us a fingerprint that we can look for on Shodan, or we can look for it in various threat intelligence tools. These are the results. So we can search on Shodan by hashes or JARM, or open ports. And in the end, we see the configuration of beacon servers. And this way we can see not just, the atomary IOCs that will be used. We can also see indicators of attack, such as name pipe, and the names of processes where Cobalt Strike will be, the beacon will be spawned in and injected in. TI feeds. Well, the previous speaker talked about TI. Now, if you're subscribed to Cobalt Strike feeds, you should be able to get the JARM and J3s. So if you want to check something dubious, that would be a way to go, a way to do it. So with Alien Vault subscription, that would actually make it an active monitoring tool, right? So this is how you can go about looking on a regular basis for default Cobalt Strike servers. And this provides you with a lot of analytics. So this is a great project by Ironnuts. They actually scanned the whole internet for us. You probably cannot read it, but let me rephrase it for you. So here, they are listing all JARM hashes. And listed here are all the URLs. So these are all the gets and all the posts. All the AS is here that you can block just like that. They're all Chinese. And lots of other great things, lots of other goodies. 32-bit, 64-bit processes to be injected in, locations where it's gonna be spawned. Finally, we have TI, which is no longer atomary like the Pyramid of Pain. Something that has been promised to us for such a long time. If HTTP traffic is not used anymore, and if we see that communication is really happening through DNS tunnels, well, there is still the opportunity to identify this traffic if you consult the table that, nobody cared to change and the parameters that stay default. Now, all these parameters, they come straight from the Cobalt Strike user guide. But you can also use statistics to the same end. So I'm showing Sigma as an example here. We can either look for patterns in the configuration, or we can try calculating the overall scope of requests to subdomains. Naturally, it's no panacea. I know loads of legitimate information. And legitimate, hosts, like DAO machines, that will be using these tunnels. And one of the tools of profiling that should help us, understand how it can work with the network telemetry. This is actually RITA, Real Intelligence Threat Analytics. You put RITA on 1 hour long, 1 hour worth, so to speak, of normal traffic, and that already will tell you a lot that you can trust. What's inside a beacon? How can we analyze a beacon? Not a specific pool of IP addresses, but say there is this malicious file we are getting and we are seeing in our perimeter. Well, if you are prepared to send it to a cloud sandbox, I would certainly recommend triage. But if you are not prepared to do that, you may want to analyze it manually. Triage in a cloud sandbox, I found it so inspiring because there's so much you can find there on Triad G. The chain of processes and deciphering of the configuration, it works like a miracle. So you can see the configuration, you see the process chain here, and even the video that shows how it all got executed. Now, if you're not prepared to send this file anywhere, then you will need to extract configurations from it somehow. Quite naturally, they will be sitting inside it or in the operating memory after it has been executed, and we can parse these memory areas and then decrypt them. That's not difficult. They XORed, with a 4-byte key.
Соответственно, можно их взять, можно получить из них вот те самые.
So we can grab them. We can extract. How do they do that?
Мы можем с вами взять те самые индикаторы атаки, понять, в какие
We can extract indicators of attack from them and see which projects this beacon will be injected in and identify its CNCs and user agents. And thus, we actually update our database of indicators of attack. A great project called 1768. This is actually cobalt melting temperature in Kelvin.
Ключи Cobalt Strike, которые есть вот в тех самых
So it contains the default keys for Cobalt Strike. You can actually find, in the copies of Cobalt Strike being peddled over Telegram. So you can actually, use these keys to interact with another beacon, pretending you're a beacon, and thus requesting its configuration files. Or alternatively, you can actually find them on 1768, and like I said, this information can be found in the memory.
Потому что вот вне зависимости от того, какой тип бикона используется,
regardless of the type of the beacon being used, its interaction will be encrypted in the AES key, which is stored in the server and in the beacon itself. So if we intercept this key, we should be able to decrypt the traffic.
Которым взаимодействовал клиент и сервер. Таким образом, получив AES-ный ключ, получив
Once we get the AES key,
метку, мы с вами, имея пикап-файл,
and we get the HMAC tag,
со стороны бикона, мы можем понять,
we can actually see which kind of commands were sent by the beacon and which files were leaked, and we can also get access to, the encryption keys that we use to, decrypt our files, for example. So we just, use these values and we put them into the pickup file.
В данном случае пример это Cobalt Strike Scan.
The example I'm showing here is Cobalt Strike Scan. With it, we can actually find the patterns in operating memory that will correspond with a beacon being injected in a given process. Until version 4, it was a stationary pattern. You would simply look for a particular pattern. And with this, encryption key, you can actually decrypt it and check the configuration. Now, this string is random. However, the format is pretty standardized, so you can actually test different combinations, and in the end, you will find something that's readable, such as beacon configuration. What are we looking for? We're effectively looking for the files where the beacon will be spawned and what it is going to get in touch with, and also the name pipes. There are two types of payloads with a Cobalt Strike. One is staged, the other is stageless. Staged is really small. It was designed not to be detected. And once it's launched, it will actually download the rest of the payload. So, for example, here we're seeing the exploitation of a vulnerability on Microsoft Word, which will then inject files in a subsidiary process where we shall see, the download of payload happening. However, the staged beacon will be limited, and we cannot build keys into that, which means the communication will not be secure, and lots of other things cannot be built into that, so it may have a difficult time hiding from AEVs. And again, we cannot insert a string like this in B64 simply because command line will not be enough for that. That's why Staged attacks are used more and more often. At this stage of the staged attack, we are already seeing creation of a named pipe. And what is a named pipe? As you can see here, as all those who scan their network with bound scanners must have seen that sometimes we know nothing about a Windows machine except for open ports, except for pipe / RPC and whatever. So this is part of the SMB standard. And thanks to it, both local processes and online hosts can communicate. This is what you can see in the video here. So we see the active listener of the name pipe is actually transmitting information. The same can be done by other devices. It requires no authentication. It requires no additional ports. This is not NetCat. We're effectively using the same Samba port, and detecting it is nearly impossible. If you don't have sysmons on the devices running it, you're not going to see any callouts to name pipes or their creation. On sysmon, there are event IDs 18 and 17 that should help you do that. They would help you register creation, or if you like profiling or something like this, because name pipes are used by everybody, like even Chrome does them, but we can identify it as something weird. When it's an anonymous pipe, this certainly warrants investigation. So even if there is no connectivity between devices, we can still use LDAP, right?
То есть у нас нет вообще ничего, но через параметры в LDAP, которые записывает одно устройство.
So some LDAP parameters maintained in one of the devices. We can transmit instructions to another compromised device, and this can be detected without any special settings, thanks to 5135, thanks to additions to Active Directory. I mean, addition of LDAP parameters to Active Directory. So we see a primary internal SD number has been expanded with new attributes, and these new attributes are indeed the executable instruction. And what everybody loves Cobalt Strike for is naturally arsenal kits. So a device so easily compromised can then be, leveraged even further, where you can, do privilege escalation, you can dump account details and credentials, or you can do lateral movement or encrypt everything. All this is available through arsenal kits. Now, we are showing an example of Mimikatz here, where it's used to compromise local credentials, but also DC sync, and DC sync was properly covered yesterday. Now, lateral movement kits require a separate mention. Everything that's possible
хакерские утилиты, которые доступны сейчас повсеместно, это
перемещение
через WMI, перемещение через SMB.
It could be WMI or SMB or other tools such as a task scheduler, DCOM services, you name it. All this stuff is available off the shelf, outside the box, out of the box, I'm sorry. Fancy tools, very popular now, such as PowerShell WinRAMs, are also there. And even Kerberos will not stop us. Same is true for Stay Kit. This is effectively a modification of the lateral movement kits, so it helps us with persistence. So task scheduler and services, and after runs and logon scripts, or WMI event subscription, the new fangled, like the new kid on the block, they all can be used with those kits. So how do we detect this stuff?
Инструмент, который используется повсеместно, о котором
Now, the tool that is
вчера
used
прекрасно рассказывали,
pretty much
это
everywhere, that was covered
Bloodhound,
yesterday,
который позволяет нам построить
is
достижимость
Bloodhound and add
поисковой
find.
ключевой информации вроде
They
учетной
actually
записи
help
ТТП,
us
встроен в
see whoever is
наверняка
or
в
whenever TGT is
типы,
being
которые
requested.
используются
And
в
it's
Cobalt
built
Strike.
into
Детектить это
various
можно как
kits
через
actually available on
детектирование
Cobalt Strike, and it can be
потенциально
detected
нелегитимной активности в команд-лайне, так и через
when you
мониторинг обращения
monitor
к
for weird
преступным
activity
группам,
through
таких как domain
CLI,
admins,
or you can also
enterprise admins,
monitor
схемы и
all
тому
the
подобное.
requests to enterprise admins and
Поговорим
local
про
admins
defense
groups.
evasion. Это достаточно сложная тема,
Defense
поскольку,
evasion now.
ну, сложная с точки зрения атакующего, поскольку тебе нужно переписать все, что может задетектировать антивирус, особенно
So
если он лежит
everything
в
that an
оперативной
AV can
памяти. Тебе нужно
detect
прям посмотреть на каждый,
should be rewritten,
на
particularly if you're
каждое
going into
наименование
operating
функции.
memory,
И
right?
это достаточно
So you may
крупный
want to
потенциальный
check the names
переход
of all the
в
functions, and then,
вирус-тотал, и все это делать по
somebody
новой.
leaks your
Но,
sample to VirusTotal, and you need to
Windows
do it all
еще не
over again.
выкручивали,
However,
еще не выкручивает .NET, и
on
он у нас
Windows,
имеет
.NET is still available,
встроенные
right?
инструменты
And
defensive evaluation,
.NET
которые называются
doesn't really
CLR.
have
CLR можно
in-bit
использовать
tools
с
for
одной
defense
единственной командой,
evaluation.
execute assembly,
CLR can be
и вперед
used,
с пути.
with a single
Мониторить
command,
это
execute
можно, но
assembly.
мониторить это редко кто. Я
It can
позже
be
покажу
monitored.
сигма-правила, которые позволяют как раз
I'm sorry, it can be
usage-логи
exploited with a single command,
каким-то
actually.
образом телеметрировать. Privilege escalation. Все, что доступно на
Privilege
текущий момент
escalation.
времени, запуск
Everything
CKP
that's
system,
available at the
использование
moment,
ворованных
such as
токенов
giving yourself
у других
system rights,
привилегированных процессов,
using
все
stolen
это доступно
tokens from
всегда.
privileged processes,
Мониторить
all this
стоит
stuff
все и
is
всегда
available
с точки
out of the
зрения
box, which means that
запуска
everything needs to
сервисов.
be monitored
Это
at
одно из
all
самых
times,
доступных
particularly when
компонентов.
it comes to service launches.
4697 это то, что должно быть у каждого CM, и то, что
4697,
каждый должен
this is
понимать, что
something
он
that every
управляет.
CM
Какие
should be
сервисы,
looking for.
какие
This way you
пользователи
will
у
be
нас
able to know,
запускают и
what's
так далее.
happening, what kind of
Через это
services are
огромное
being
количество,
launched and
огромное
installed by
предупреждение.
users. Because, the
Credential
surface of
access,
attack there is
ни для кого
colossal.
не секрет, что все это используется для
Credential
получения
access. It is
узких
no secret
имплементаций, как с точки
that all
зрения
this stuff is used
локального
by
дампа,
mimikatz.
так и с точки зрения дампа
Yeah, this is true for
доменных
local dump
креденшалов. Если мы хотим
and
скрафтить
domain
что-то из
credentials dump. So if you
сети,
want to
то
craft something
существуют также инструменты вроде
online,
anti-LM relaying,
there are
когда мы
also
создаем
tools like
фейковую
anti-LM
копию шару,
relaying,
на которую
where you
заложены те
create
пользователи,
a
учетные записи
fake
которых хотим
shared
компрометировать.
resource,
И
and you
латералка.
lure
Латералка,
users there.
латералка, латералка, целая куча.
Finally,
Опять же, какие
lateral
говорим.
movement,
Детектить
lots of
можно
options
как
here.
с точки зрения
And like I said,
привилегированных
we
токенов,
can
которые мы видим
detect
с
it
вами в
by, for
4624,
example, privileged
так и
tokens.
с точки зрения
4624 should be the
доступа к
event to look
шарам. Мы с
for.
вами конкретно,
Or
опять же,
also
в
we can
сервисе
look for
инсталлируемом
access to file
видим,
shares.
что потенциально какой-то вредоносный у нас
We will see, for
инструмент
example, here
используется. Мы с
that
вами
a
видим,
potentially
что
malicious
может
tool is being
использоваться
used.
факто-хэш в данном случае, когда мы
And it could be, for
пытаемся, опять же,
example, a
создать
case of
name pipe
pass the hash
благодаря
when we are trying
login
to
type
create a
деривации
name pipe
и так далее и тому
using
подобное.
login type 9.
SMB Remote Service Execution. Таким
SMB
же
remote
образом
service
мы снова
execution.
мониторим создание и изменение
So
в
here
данном
we'll
случае
also be
терминирование
monitoring
сервисов.
for a
Мы с
creation
вами
or
видим их
modification or
сетевую
termination of
телеметрию,
services.
когда мы
We will be
из
seeing
сетевого
their
трафика
network
можем увидеть
telemetry,
обращение к
and out of the
админским шарам,
network
которые
traffic, we
являются
should
основным
be able to
prerequisite для
see
создания подобного
requests
рода
to
активности.
admin file
То
shares.
же самое можно сказать и про использование реверс-прокси.
The same could be
Мы
said
с
for
вами в
reverse
данном
proxies.
случае видим, что для чисто своего удобства
We see here
злоумышленники
that
подняли реверс-прокси и пытаются залогиниться по
attackers have
RDP-типу
created a reverse proxy to make it more
компрометированному
convenient,
компьютеру. Таким
and they're
образом,
trying
мы
to log on through
в
RDB.
аудите подключения видим,
Compromised
что
host.
подключение произошло с
So we
локального
see
IP-адреса со 127.0.0.
that a connection is coming from
И,
a
наконец,
local address,
сигма-правила.
like
Я всем
IPs
рекомендую просто вот
127.
по поиску
And finally,
Cobalt
Sigma
Strike
rules.
ознакомиться с тем,
My
что там происходит.
recommendation
Мы видим, что
is
есть
to check
дефолтные
what they should be
параметры,
for
есть
Cobalt Strike.
дефолтные настройки, которые
Note the
часто
default
достаточно
parameters,
используются.
the
В
default
данном
settings,
случае
which are often kept as
амазоновский
such.
дефолтный
So Amazon default Cobalt Strike profile, for example, can easily be detected by the patterns used for communication. Now, for profiling purposes, there are lots and lots of user agents to look out for. And you may want to profile your system on the basis of which user agents you're actually using in your infrastructure and what kind of anomalies, therefore, you would like to watch out for. Malicious service installation, they're actually ready-made profiles to use. So please note that hidden PowerShell should not, go unnoticed. For stuff here, you will need to generate lots and lots of rules because it could be encodes or it can be eng. There is a lot of room for maneuver for the perpetrators here. But all this can actually be well covered with Sigma rules. Like I said, services are indeed very, very sensitive.
Говоря дальше о тех самых неймпайпах, мы с вами видим уже
попытку без
Sysmon каким-то образом
идентифицировать without Sysmon to identify creation or a query of a name pipe. And the audit of 4697 is helping us find the pipes and the echoes and run the wells, which are so often used for initial injection.
Там примерно из 2000 проанализированных сервисов.
When I'm thinking now to the diagram I showed previously, out of like 2,000 services, most of the injections are going into run DLL32. Although you can actually inject in any process which is guaranteed to be on the system. NTLM relay, which I mentioned previously, in connection to credential access. Monitoring here should focus on the driver which supports initiation of collection of NTLM hashes. Oh, thus you can therefore locally monitor for things like that.
Я говорил о обходе средств защиты, который позволяет
I mentioned previously bypassing defense mechanisms.
Быть реализованным с помощью встроенных инструментов.
And there are inbuilt tools for that. I mean, embedded tools of .NET can be used for that. So there are some commands in CLR which need to be monitored. I mean, if you want to detect the tools that are trying to abuse your .NET. And finally, Cobalt Strike beacon activity. It's common knowledge, really. Everybody knows it's important to monitor for who am I and echo. And run once is also a pretty commonly used utility. The mind map for detection purposes. So you may want to keep it if you believe you are investigating something that may prove to be a Cobalt Strike case. So network indicators, stuff you can get from active lookups or TI platforms and manual searches or manual exploration, investigation of samples.
Автоматическое, либо ручное
automated or manual analysis of whatever gets fired up in the memory and extraction of keys and configurations from it.
Песочницах, так и ручное на
сайте. Both for network sandboxes and otherwise.
Memory analysis, то есть анализ
and finally memory analysis.
Так и postmortem forensic,
and it could be postmortem or live forensics. So you will be checking full dumps and process dumps, looking for specific patterns attributable to Cobalt Strike, and also live analysis. So this could be process start log analysis and service analysis, like I previously said, as well as analysis of events related to service emergence. That's it for me. Thank you very much.
Спасибо большое за весьма такую энергичную презентацию продукта.
Thank you very much for such an energetic speech. Will there be a promo code?
В тележке.
Contact me on Telegram, okay?
Добрый день. Некоторые любят открывать РДП вовне, делают пятизначный порт.
Hello. Some people like opening RDP ports and they think that if it's a 5-digit port, it's safe. So if we are running, Windows Server, latest one, and RDP is the only thing exposed online. Do you think Cobalt Strike will be able to find its way inside?
Мы с вами говорим о неком initial access.
Well, we're talking here about initial access, right?
Дефолтный порт вовсе не значит, что про него
The
никто не
fact
знает.
that you have changed the default port doesn't really mean nobody knows about it, and eventually it will be known.
Вот в тот самый день, когда появится следующий
So,
зеро-логон, молниеносно в
And
течение
once you have 0-day log on, then within minutes or maybe hours at most, the exploit will be there. So sooner or later, you will be hacked. Like even if you have sophisticated passwords and two-factor authentication, unfortunately, the quality of Microsoft code is such that sooner or later there will be a hole there. And, people in the know what to do about it. Thanks for such a roller coaster of a presentation. What about Armitage? Is it supported anymore? I think the latest release dates back to 2019. And if the system is behind a nut, there is no way of breaking through it, although, we can attack it from the inside. Email is still the way. Well, we are talking about gaining some initial access. It could be external services, it could be email, it could be a USB stick.
Привет, спасибо за доклад. У меня вопрос такой.
Hi.
Вначале ты сказал, что Cobalt полностью кастомизируется.
You said at first that Cobalt is fully customizable. And effectively, you can do whatever you like in order to bypass a signature search. Does it mean that a hacker would be, nearly impossible to catch if he customizes everything, while Security Operations Center will have to sit on their hands and effectively wait for hackers to get this customization wrong? Okay, we have got signature analysis, but there is also behavior analysis. If we only count on signature analysis, if we believe that, there will be a hash or a string that we know by the signature, and we bet our farm on that as a SOC, then sooner or later, if the hacker does customize every sample, from initial access to all the tools used for lateral movement, well, without behavioral analysis, without checking the logs of services and Active Directory, we will be screwed. Or, let me put it differently, we won't be safe. So there are tactics and techniques. If the service is installed, you can actually kill, for example, log creation in the system. But then, as a SOC employee, you need to be, mindful of that. Like if you see there are no logs coming, wouldn't that be a suspicious turn of events? I'm here. It's not a technical question. I guess that for all interested in IOCs, we're all wondering if the Sigma rules are in Sigma repository. Yes, they are. Will there be a link? Just find Sigma rules in Google, okay? Oh, so it's not a proprietary database. No, this is Sigma HQ. Oh, right, I got you. Thank you.
Тогда на этом все.
Okay, thank you very much then.
Приз уходит, наверное,
And the prize will go
за первый
to
вопрос про RDP. И вот
the gentleman who asked the RDP question, and to the gentleman over here.